Welcome to Hub-Bub, the People's Podcast, where we engage our citizens and investors with the activities of the Planning and Code Administration and encourage everyone to contribute to Hagerstown's growth.
All right, well, welcome to the October edition of the Hub-Bub Podcast. My name is Sean Brown, and more importantly,
Donnie Harcum.
Yeah.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Yeah?
Doing good. Not bad for the time we're living in.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Not bad at all. Nice and cool outside today. Nice weather. I'm enjoying it.
Absolutely. I just want to say it's a privilege to work with such a fine individual, the face of the podcast, really. Donnie's really kind of the face of Hagerstown. For those of you who don't know it, many of you recognize him. So anyway.
Oh, my.
Okay, we'll move on.
Keep going.
Yeah. So this month's podcast is really another important one for us. Please, when we think about what we're talking about today, don't assume that it's a snooze fest podcast this time. It's important because what we're going to be talking about today is something that, on one hand, can help deter crime in our area, and it's very inexpensive and very easy to implement. Of course, we'll expand on that. But what we also want to recognize is this month is really a lot of months for recognition. For example, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Mm-hmm. It's Code Compliance Appreciation Month.
Hey, that's us.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Hey, we appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. Yeah. So it's also Fire Prevention Month, and this also is Crime Prevention Month.
Yes.
Which leads us to our topic for today, which is CPTED. CPTED. What's CPTED?
Sounds a little scary.
Yeah, but it's not. It's not. Ironically. What is CPTED? Well, it's really an acronym for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. Now that sounds kind of boring, but we're really going to expand on why it's so important to know. So who is our program designed for today? Well, really anyone, because everyone has the potential of being affected by crime. From someone who's renting a property, who just wants to be safe in their home with their family, all the way up to the developer who owns real estate, right?
Yeah.
They want to protect their investment.
Exactly.
Right? And sometimes crime can have a tremendous impact on that. So really our podcast today is an opportunity to engage everyone in our community, whether you live here in the Hagerstown area or even outside the area. As we'll highlight later on, there are a number of localities that implement this type of program. So if you haven't heard of it yet, it's probably just a matter of time. Now with Hagerstown, the CPTED program, it's been around for quite some time. And what we really wanted to do was take the opportunity to really commend someone that was really instrumental in bringing this program to Hagerstown. And his name is Jerry Kendall. He was an officer for the Hagerstown Police Department. And he was the one, who put this program together. He worked very hard in educating the citizens, and even us as well, with the practices of CPTED in the city of Hagerstown. He really did a lot. And so right now he's retired.
Yeah, Officer Kendall, great guy, and really hope he's enjoying that retirement right now. So.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we hope he is too. But we have to carry on, right?
Yes. All right. So what exactly is CPTED? Well, before we jump into it, let's recap about crime. So crime is a social problem, in society that affects thousands of people's lives each year. Crimes against people and properties generate considerable fear within communities, and there are many ways to combat crime, and that's where CPTED comes into play. We're going to inform you of steps that you can take to deter criminal activity from your own property. But back to our question, what is CPTED? Well, there's 4 principles to CPTED, and they are natural surveillance, natural access controls, territorial reinforcement, and maintenance. And Sean, maybe you can fill us in on the natural surveillance side of things.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like what it's describing. Natural surveillance, basically you're kind of keeping an eye on things in a natural way. And what we mean by that, and perhaps the easiest way that it's not so kosher with a lot of neighbors, is you've got that individual in your neighborhood, and we might call them the nosy neighbor. They're always into somebody's business, right? there's that one person, you may even see them driving through the neighborhood, just checking things out almost on a daily basis, right?
Yes, and if you don't know who your nosy neighbor is, it might be you. I don't know.
It might be. Yeah. And quite honestly, if you don't know who your nosy neighbor is, it might be good to get to know them.
Exactly. They're the ones that have their eyes all around the neighborhood and know what is going on.
Yeah. So, we say that because that's the kind of person that, even though there might be some negative aspects to what they do, you may not appreciate them, who knows what they're doing in a positive way. They may actually be helping to reduce criminal activity in the neighborhood. So that's kind of an example of natural surveillance. You've got people, whether it's you or somebody else, they're the eyes on the street. And so what they're doing is they're trying to help reduce that risk. In the end, their motive really is just to reduce that criminal activity, right? Keeping the unwanted people and actions out of the neighborhood that have a potential for harming us. Right. So when we think about other things that can help, and other aspects of this is also the aspect of design and how our homes and the outdoor areas are designed as well. Because here's the thing with criminals, generally speaking, they don't want to be seen, right? So they're going to look for ways that they can commit a crime without being seen. So they're going to take advantage of natural features and obstacles, physical features. And so, for example, if there's windows facing the street in your home, and they can get in through a window without being seen because there's obstacles blocking the view from the street, then that's what they're going to utilize. Exactly. They're going to look for something that's going to block your view from seeing them enter the home. Same way with lighting. Lighting is key as well. At nighttime, of course, there are things like dusk to dawn lights with motion sensors, and so these lights will stay on all night, and then when they sense the sunlight, they'll go off. So that is a way of illuminating the exterior of your home to create an unwelcome environment or unwanted activities. And nowadays with technology, you have some of these lights that are very, very inexpensive. They're LED. They don't take a lot of power. So they're very, very inexpensive, and it's a very inexpensive way to deter crime in your area. You can even put timers on these things. So there's all kinds of options for you. Just to those of you who may be listening who rent properties, of course you don't want to invest a lot of time and money in a property that's not yours, but what we're talking about is an easy solution that is almost portable.
Yeah, there are a lot of plug and play options out there now that make it so accessible for just about anybody, which is awesome.
Yeah, it is. And if you're going to go somewhere else, you just take it with you, and that's just a continuing help for you wherever you go. And then, we talked about obstructions as well. So that means looking at things that would obstruct what a criminal might look as something to hide them from what they're doing. So eliminating as much as possible those objects that prevent from having that line of sight from the street, as we were talking about. And that would include many cases. What a big thing is landscaping, bushes. So people sometimes will grow these large plants and bushes as decoration, and the intent is to make the yard look good, but they allow them to get so big, and they don't ever trim them back, that now it's blocked just about the whole house.
Right.
And that is ideal for a criminal, because now who can see them breaking into the house, right? So it's just something to keep in mind. We just want to look for things that we can eliminate that would invite criminal activity. A lot of other methods as well. Maybe you could expand on some of those, Donnie.
Yeah, so the next principle we'd want to talk about is natural access controls. So these are a way to control access to your home with doors, fences, shrubs, and other physical elements to help keep unauthorized persons out. The most basic principle of access controls is making sure that your home has adequate locks, doors, and window barriers. These seem like simple things, but we gotta make sure that we are, doing the simple things to keep the bad guys out. And we can also include the design of the home. So when working with an architect, consider entrances, exits, fencing, landscaping, and lighting that can subtly direct both foot and vehicular traffic in ways to decrease criminal opportunities. Here in Hagerstown and in other urban environments, access control can be more difficult on street and areas that are entirely open to public use. There's a lot of foot traffic in those areas. But there are techniques to control access. Non-physical but psychological barriers can be used to achieve this objective. You can use signs or paving textures or nature strips or anything that announces the integrity and uniqueness of an area. And there's also territorial reinforcement. This is creating clear boundaries between public and private areas, such as fences, pavement treatment, art, signs, good maintenance, and landscaping. And it's a way to show and express the ownership of your home. And the final principle of CPTED is maintenance and management. This relates to the neighborhood's sense of pride of place. The more dilapidated an area, the more likely it is to attract unwanted activities. The maintenance and the image of an area can have a major impact on whether it will become targeted. So, those are some of the basic principles of CPTED.
Yeah, really good advice. And there are a lot of resources, a lot of things that you just mentioned there. People may be not so familiar with and may be foreign, but there's a lot of resources. Everything's online now.
Yes.
So there are a lot of resources online that you can get a little bit more information about what this is talking about. A lot of nice illustrations that show how these things can actually be implemented. So good things, and what we've talked about here is that what we as individuals can do with our own properties. And so you may be saying, well, man, I've done everything I can. Mm-hmm. I've done all these things. What about my local government? What are they going to do for me? And rightly so. People often look to their local government. Hey, I've got this issue in my area. What can we do? And with Hagerstown, we do have a lot of abandoned and vacant properties. Unfortunately, we're working very, very hard to address those issues. And often a complaint or a concern that we get from citizens is, hey, there's this vacant house down the street. People are breaking in there. They're even living in there, mm-hmm. right? And it's not ideal. What can we do? So those are good questions. And the short answer is that in the city of Hagerstown, as many jurisdictions do, there are things that we do to try to help this situation. So for example, here in Hagerstown, we were fortunate enough to have a couple of staff members attend a week-long CPTED training course back in 2013 that was put on by the DOJ, the Department of Justice. And so from that program, what the city was able to do is take those principles, those lessons learned, and then add them to existing ordinances. And that's important to know, as we've discussed in an earlier podcast. I think it might have been, we touched on it in our first podcast. We can't arbitrarily do things unless there are laws or ordinances. Right. And so those things have been put in place to where we can take, we can be proactive with addressing these things. So now, as an example, when it comes to new development, we talked earlier about, natural features, lighting, landscaping. So what happens now, and what's happened for some time, is then when properties are developed, subdivisions or commercial properties, that's part of the site plan review process, which we talked about in an earlier podcast.
We did.
Yeah, site plans. So there's a lot that goes into that. So what happens is, again, when a property is developed, then those standards for developing a property are such that they help deter crime applying these CPTED principles. And so those things take place, again, with commercial and residential properties. When site engineers and architects are designing these areas, they're developing these plans with these principles in view. So what are some of those things that they do when it comes to implementing these things? Well, again, they're looking at how, for example, the building is on the property. Is it oriented in a way that's going to present the best view for the neighbors and so forth and deter criminal activity? They're going to look at the materials and the landscaping. How are they located? Are they located in a visible area? Fences. Not that you can't necessarily have a solid fence, but when you have a solid fence 4 or 6 feet high, you can't see anything on the other side. Mm-hmm. But when you have things like picket fences or permeable fences, now you still have something decorative. It's a barrier. It goes to what you were saying earlier. It directs people and walk. but then you can also still see what's going on the property. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. Lighting plan as well. Lighting is built into site plans. So there are a lot of design features that are taken into consideration and standards when it comes to lighting, with such as parking lots, pedestrian routes, and ensuring these areas are well lit in a balanced way. And then avoiding blind corners. So, when someone, either vehicles or people, pedestrian traffic, are coming to a corner, they can see through and what's approaching. So eliminating those blind corners so somebody's not caught off guard, somebody's not waiting or hiding. That is eliminated. And again, we talked about landscaping, trying to avoid large trees and garages, utility structures, fences, a lot of things that, for example, as trees, if you place one close to a house or a building, and it's close to even a second or third story building, somebody could easily climb the tree and gain access. So, it's just those things we may not think about, but strategically placing them.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so that they eliminate that threat. So there's just a lot of standards, even in, for example, our land management code that govern, trimming of shrubs within certain distances, 24 inches or lower around play areas, driveway edge buff areas to allow visibility from public streets. And then with larger areas, especially with large parking lots and large commercial developments, utilizing security cameras as well. So we just touched on a few things, just as an example to show that, yes, we are certainly interested in reducing crime, and one way we do that is through design.
That's great because, our planning commission, when they're reviewing the site plans, they do take all of these standards into consideration before their final approval. So what can we do about existing structures that are out there already? Well, we decided to take the first step by using the CPTED principles and applying them to our vacant structures in Hagerstown. And we did a vacant structure episode in episode 12 where we discuss in detail about the vacant structure programs in America and the program that we have here in Hagerstown, if you wanted to go back and listen to that one. So vacant structures are to be licensed with Hagerstown, and if they have been vacant for 6 months, that is when they need to be registered, and there are registration and inspection requirements upon registering. In addition to the inspection requirements of vacant structures, an owner of a vacant non-residential structure or vacant residential structure is to maintain the structure to the following standards, which are based on CPTED. So for exterior lighting, it should be at all entry doors. Entry doors shall be illuminated from dusk to dawn. They should be directed downward and away from adjoining premises. And they should maintain 1 foot candle of light measured at 1 foot above the ground to a minimum distance of 20 feet from the center of each door. And we do have an exemption with exterior lighting at any entry door if the street lighting meets the minimum illumination level required by this section. And we also need to look at doors and windows. All entry doors shall have engaged deadbolt locks. Doors not capable of deadbolt locks shall be secured in an approved manner. And all exterior sliding doors and windows shall have lift and slide protection. And finally, all shrubbery, hedges, trees, or similar vegetation shall be maintained so that a clear view of the entry doors from the public sidewalk or street is not impeded. So these are things that we look for when we're inspecting those vacant structures. It should be maintained at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do our best to apply these standards with the registered vacant structures in Hagerstown. These circumstances change, and we appreciate it when people make us aware of these things. It would be great if we could daily know how these things change, but we appreciate the citizens who let them know, because then now we can address it as these things are affected, especially when it comes to vacant structures, because we can't prevent everything from happening.
Exactly.
When it comes to these vacant structures, but the fact is that it does happen a lot, because when we get complaints about people living in structures or breaking into them, then we find ourselves as a department going in and securing these structures to prevent people from going into them. So we do our best, and we'll even make the repairs. As we've been talking about, we don't want to allow people to get back into these structures.
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Right. So we kind of we'll try to do our best to make these repairs based on the CPTED standards, and the neighbors always appreciate that.
Yeah, and it goes back to the nosy neighbor that we talked about before. We kind of say that jokingly, but having the eyes out there, I bring it up all the time. I appreciate the citizens that call in with concerns about vacant properties or non-vacant properties. But it's just good to know that we do have those eyes out there that are keeping an eye on these places, because, like you said, we can't be everywhere at once, and it is nice to know when a place is vacant and needs that attention.
Absolutely. And so, of course, we've talked about, in principle, the CPTED standards, and we do use them in Hagerstown. A lot of localities do implement these things. So check with your local jurisdiction to see if they're implemented. And if not, why not inquire to see what you can do to get them put into place for your locality, because they are very helpful. So you can view our CPTED standards right on our website, hagerstowncode.org, hagerstowncode.org. And again, some nice resources there. And this crime prevention through environmental design, really the goal is to create safe neighborhoods. So we can't always control everything that happens in neighborhoods, but we can do what we can to try to reduce that probability of crime. One criminologist said this regarding CPTED. He said, quote, "CPTED is not the total answer to community problems, but it does provide the community with the means to eliminate or reduce environmental obstacles to social, cultural, or managerial control," end quote. So there you have it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, even if it prevents one instance of somebody getting hurt, starting a fire in a vacant building, I'll take that all day.
Sure.
So cool. Thanks for all that information, Sean. Now it's Sean's favorite part of the podcast, the weird news story. Well, today we got a double feature on the weird news stories. We got two of them for you. So the first one, the title is Knock Knock, Who's There? Not Your Doorbell. Doorbell thieves emerge in Denver. So this is a story about a thief who is going around stealing Ring video doorbells. So the Ring video doorbell is a doorbell that when you ring it, the homeowner can view the front of the door from their smartphone. Well, in the most recent theft in Colorado, the thief stealing the doorbell was caught and recorded on video. So fortunately for this technology, this led to his arrest for being a clumsy crook.
Yeah. So he stole the doorbell.
Yes.
As if that was going to eliminate the video footage.
Right.
I guess.
Yep, but it was recording the entire time. So this is a similar one. Stupid burglar steals surveillance camera but forgets to turn it off. So similar to the first story, a homeowner had a malfunctioning garage door, and they installed a security camera. And fortunately he did, because his neighbor came into the garage and started stealing a few items before noticing the camera. After noticing it, he ended up stealing the camera as well. Well, he never turned the camera off. And, similar to the first story, this led to his arrest as well. And, these two fellas sound like they went to the same theft academy. They're not that great at what they were doing, apparently.
Probably first in their class, probably.
Well, that wraps up the weird news stories. And make sure you're following us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. You can search for us by searching the Hub-Bub Podcast. And you can also find us on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify, and most other podcast platforms. So we look forward to seeing you there, and I'll turn it over to Sean.
Yeah. And I might add that we always appreciate the feedback.
Yes. Always.
Especially with our podcast. We've covered a number of topics in the past more than a year now.
Yeah.
Year and a half almost. And so, go back and listen to those, because a lot of important topics. But if there's something maybe we haven't talked about, let us know. And if there's a topic that you think the community needs and would like us to expand on, let us know. We'll see what we can do. But to our musical guests for this month, I like this group. I like their sound. I'm kind of like this genre of music, of blues and rock. Our group this month is the Rhythm Kings. And they formed back in 1992. It's a blues and rock trio, and they performed all around the tri-state area, being in the western part of Maryland here. They play a lot of local spots here in Hagerstown. Of course, with the pandemic going on, they, like a lot of groups, are limited in what they can do. But anyway, if you get a chance to check them out, really nice to listen to. I think the best way to describe this group is they kind of have the sound of the late Stevie Ray Vaughan, guitarist and the vocals. But anyway, yeah, really, really nice group. In addition to where they've played locally, they've played at the Western Maryland Blues Fest 9 times.
Oh, wow.
So keep asked to be coming back.
Must be good.
Yeah. So this trio is made up of Bob Bantillo, plays bass and vocals, Louis Palladino, guitar and vocals, and Jesse Kemmerer on the drums. So, of course, you can check them out on social media. They have a nice Facebook page, The Rhythm Kings. So let's take out the show by listening to The Rhythm Kings.